And ladies and gentlemen, my name is Arcane Static, and today we're talking more Little Nightmares theories. This time we're going to talk about a bunch of the stuff from the recent DLC that just came out, Little Nightmares Secrets of the Maw, the first part being The Depths, where we are introduced to the Runaway Kid. I've heard a lot of questions and seen a lot of proposed theories now that DLC has come out, so let's try to answer a bunch of those questions, respond to a bunch of the theories, and then introduce a few of my own. First things first, in a previous video I made some pretty strong assertions that the kid I called the Bread Child was actually the Runaway Kid. I'm happy to say that I have been proven wrong. There's a few things that disprove this theory, so let's go through them. The first thing is the appearance of the two characters. They kinda have similar hairstyles and clothes, but the biggest giveaway is the lack of the shackle on the Bread Child's foot. To be fair, we don't get the greatest look at the Bread Child, and really only in silhouette, but that bit of missing costume feels like a pretty big tell to me that they're not the same person. The second thing is the demeanor and the way of movement that the two characters have, far different from each other. The Runaway Kid tends to be confident looking and sort of holds himself with his arms hanging at his sides, or out ready like he's going to run, with his eyes cast slightly downwards like Six. The Bread Child, though, clutches at his shoulders and stands with his legs close together, slightly crooked and crossed, looking very vulnerable and scared. This is another thing that it's not possible to say it's flat-out evidence that they're different characters, because there could be some kind of trauma or an experience or whatever that causes him to switch his stance and personality, but the third and strongest thing that disproves it is the timeline. In the main game, we see that the sheet rope that was used by the girl in the skirt to escape from the shared bedroom is already there, and that the sewer grate is closed in the room where the Runaway Kid falls into the long pipe. The kids in front of the I-beam surveillance system are not there yet in the DLC, but they are there in the main game. That means that pretty much the entirety of the first DLC in The Depths takes place before Six starts to move out from her suitcase. If that is the case, then the only way that the Bread Child could be the Runaway Kid is if, after being captured by the janitor, there was a period of time before he was put into a cage where the janitor allowed him to go into the cafeteria and eat food. That seems unlikely, even highly so. So I think that these 3 points make short work of my previous theory that they're the same person. It is impossible to reconcile with the timeline. I mean, before the DLC was released, this theory was much more plausible, what with the kids kinda looking like each other, but with the introduction of the crossing paths, it is no longer possible. Let's talk about the granny now. So here's some questions to answer pretty quickly. What's the deal with this room, where everything is tied down underwater such that it can't float? During my livestream playthrough the day that it came out, I sort of half-guessed that it was so that the granny could have a place to hang out and chill underwater. Well, it turns out I was right. Here's a picture of the concept art that proves it. What kind of creature is the granny? Is she the same kind of construct doll-type creature as the janitor and the chefs, or is she something else? Well, let's look at some pieces of info that can help with this. Firstly, we know from the first time we see one of the chefs that he smokes, despite being a weird construct character, according to my theories. That means that they have biological functions, at least respiratory in nature. We also see while the granny is in the water, she creates bubbles during some of the times she's chasing the Runaway Kid. This makes me think that she also has lungs. However, given the room we see earlier, I can posit also that she probably doesn't need the lungs that she might have, and that she's fully capable of surviving underwater without oxygen. Granted, it's also possible that she doesn't spend a terrible long time underwater at once, so that bit of her biology might just be completely toss-outable. We know that she's affected by electricity, but that's not really a useful piece of information. Animals, inanimate objects, constructs, pretty much anything can be affected by electricity so long as it can conduct. My guess is that the chefs and the janitor would also be affected in a similar manner if exposed to salt water with a high voltage electricity running through it as well. That current would probably kill them all. I bet she's got some kind of water-based tremor sense, able to feel vibrations in the water. I also bet that she's got the ability to smell things in the water like a shark or other fish would, evidenced by the way that she can locate where you throw the pieces of fish into the water. She definitely can exist and move on land as well, because who else could have done this handprint? So if she were a D&D character, for instance, maybe her monster stat block would look something like this. I think that, given the information we have, it's not possible to say just what she really is yet. It's not impossible that she's a construct like the rest of the denizens, but according to the Steam release page, she was left to decay and rage. Do constructs decay? Well, who knows, guys? We don't know how long it's been either. Now, what's the deal with the depths? We know that it must have been a place that had purpose before, as we find just stacks and piles of clothes there. The clothes are too big to be for the children, and many of them are sort of like 50s-style button-up collared dresses, so it stands to reason that they're not for the chefs or the janitor either. That leaves the guests. Those clothes must have belonged to the guests before they get butchered en masse and turned into meat. But how did they get down here, though? Well, we see that there are chutes that lead from higher bits of the maw to the lower bits, evidenced by the chute that has the bits of fish coming in from the kitchen. They have to be coming in from the kitchen because they're cut in half, definitely on purpose and with a knife. So we know the chefs must have some kind of trash chute into which they dump the bits of fish periodically. Therefore, it stands to reason that those same kinds of chutes may exist in other places where they could dump these clothes. We see a lot of furniture and the like as well, leading me to believe that there used to be people using this space. The furniture is mostly chairs, dressers, tables, boxes, with couches and beds thrown in here and there as well. Could the depths have once been a domicile for more guests? Now, the popular theory right now is that the depths used to be active, but was then flooded and abandoned. That supposition is supported by the immense amount of flooding and the seaweed and scummy residue left everywhere. However, here's something that throws a wrench into that theory. Why, if this place was normal and then suddenly flooded and was therefore abandoned, is there a series of engineering mechanics that raise and lower the levels of the water in many of those areas? If this place was not intended to have water in it, then why would those mechanical components exist? Furthermore, if the mechanics did exist before the flooding, what possible purpose could they have served? Why do they exist at all? This is a piece of information that causes a little bit of cognitive dissonance, so we don't really know how long this place has been flooded, or indeed if it was accidentally flooded at all. Was it always like this? Let's talk about this hanging bag here. We can see a small, pale, childlike arm hanging from it once we pull it out of the water. Timeline-wise, that means this bag cannot have been in the water for very long, and here's why. It's time for some science. In oceanic salt water, the temperature of the water matters heavily in terms of the decay of flesh. If the water is below about 7 degrees Celsius, then the bacterial propagation that decays the insides of the body could be slowed significantly by this coldness. Also, at that cold of a temperature, it encourages the human body to form a substance called adipocere, which I'm definitely not pronouncing correctly, probably, but it's a sort of like waxy, soapy secretion that can help protect the flesh from decay. Even with cold water's help, though, the decay would have taken effect in no more than, say, 4 or 5 weeks at most. Even if that arm were in really cold water, it would still be heavily decayed if it had been in there for a long time. So in a cold water situation, I'd give this corpse bag no more than maybe 3 weeks of having been down there, because we see no trace of decay on this arm at all. However, the Runaway Kid swims in this water for extended periods of time. Cold water treatment for a corpse is great at below 7 degrees, but extended exposure to water at even as high as 16 degrees can cause hypothermia in a living person. The Runaway Kid shows no signs of slowness or discomfort while in or having just gotten out of the water, so I have to assume that the water is a significantly more comfortable, warmer temperature. That throws the timeline for this bag to be way smaller. Warm seawater is full of tiny scavengers and microscopic organisms that will just lay into any kind of flesh. In warm seawater, flesh will decay in way less time, beginning to putrefy in as little as a week. So that means, in the past few days, something got a hold of at least one kid, stuffed it and a bunch of other things that don't float into a bag, wrapped it with rope, hung it on a winch, and then dropped it partially into the water. Who was it? What else is in this bag? How recently was something else down here? Could it have been the granny that did it? Where did that kid come from? Was that arm even a child's arm? Or was it an arm belonging to one of these terrifying things? Well, who knows? But this is all just something to consider. The next volume of the comic comes out in a day or two, depending on when you watch this video. I'm really excited for it, and I'll be working on that kind of video with more stuff from the comics, in addition to more, possibly fantastical theories about story stuff that's, I guess, more wild speculation than actual theory, but I'm in love with this franchise. If you have any more information that would corroborate or cancel any of this video or my theories so far, please post about it in the comments. I'd be really interested in seeing it. Plus, you guys keep giving me more ideas for videos. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you did, the like and subscribe buttons are waiting just below this video to be clicked on, and hopefully drawn out of the water before it would decay, depending on the temperature of the water. You can also follow my socials, that's the Facebook and Twitter that are in the description box, and if you feel like it, you can help me keep making videos like this one by donating just $1 a month would help to the Patreon link that's down there as well. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.